Inklusive Bildung ist ein zentrales Anliegen der UNESCO. Es geht dabei um nicht mehr, aber auch um nicht weniger als um einen Mentalitätswandel. Wir wollen, dass ohnehin Benachteiligte nicht auch noch zusätzlich gesellschaftlich ausgegrenzt werden. Ein wichtiges Instrument für die Umsetzung inklusiver Bildung ist die UN-Konvention über die Rechte von Menschen mit Behinderungen. Alle Menschen sollen dementsprechend, unabhängig von ihren besonderen Lernbedürfnissen, von ihrem Geschlecht, ethnischer Zugehörigkeit, Religion oder anderen sozialen oder ökonomischen Voraussetzungen, Zugang zu gleicher, hochwertiger Bildung haben und ihre Potenziale frei entwickeln können. Diese UN-Konvention wurde 2006 von den Vereinten Nationen verabschiedet. Deutschland hat sie 2009 ratifiziert. Damit hat auch Deutschland sich verpflichtet, völkerrechtlich verpflichtet, ein inklusives Bildungssystem auf allen Ebenen zu institutionalisieren.
If the education system, for example, is not educating children with disabilities, that is an exclusion. If, for example, learners from ethnic groups are in a mainstream school and they're not learning, that is exclusion. If children are receiving education in a language in early grades other than their own, that is exclusion.
It's not just about having the access, but also making sure that children and individual learners feel that they are included in the process.
If we want a society that is responsive to different people's needs, we have to educate everybody to be aware of everybody's needs.
Education is a right, but it also has an instrumental value to society.
The country where I come from, majority of disabled people come from very poor families, and unless children are educated, then I don't see much opportunities for them to have better lives in the future. Because when you're poor and you have a disability and you're a girl child, then you really would have to suffer triple discrimination.
Being an inclusive school refers to the capacity of an ordinary local school to respond to the needs of all learners in its catchment area, including those requiring extra support because of learning or other disability, social disadvantage, cultural difference, or other barriers to learning.
The concept of barriers to learning replaces the old explanation of learners with special needs. The assumption of learners with special needs is that the problems in the learner's educational development is rooted in the learner himself or herself. And it excludes all the extraneous factors and all the other barriers that may exist, meaning that for a long time we looked at the learner as being the problem in terms of developing educationally, whereas barriers to learning actually reflects a wider range of inadequacies based on social, economic, political, educational. So there are more wider concepts or constructs that actually lead to some of the barriers.
Inclusion is as much about welcoming and supportive attitudes as it is about ensuring the policies and practices in the school serve the best interests of all learners.
They'd been doing a maths test and one of the blind children had come top, and the sighted children were just completely astonished that a blind child could do better than the sighted child, and it completely transformed their understanding about disability and their perception of these children. So there's a huge learning and a huge benefit goes on, not just for the children who have a disability, but a huge benefit for the non-disabled children in learning about respect and inclusion and valuing difference within people.
If you want to make a more inclusive society, if you want a society that is more equitable and just, one that's more empathetic, if you want your son or your daughter to be more empathetic, to be a full human, he or she needs to be exposed to difference. And you should be thankful that that's how the classroom's operating. And it's not taking away in whatsoever from your child's education. In fact, it's only enriching it. Your son or daughter will learn more and be a more effective human and will gain so much emotional intelligence, which really is what helps someone succeed in life. If you look at the studies, it's not the IQ, as it's measured by, say, standardized IQ measures like the Stanford Binet or the Western test, don't really measure success later on in life. But you know what does? Emotional intelligence. It is strongly correlated with success later. So yes, you don't want your child to have a dumbed down education, and in fact they won't. They'll still excel academically, plus they'll have all the advantages of learning empathy and learning about difference early on and learning about developing this emotional intelligence, which is actually key to success later in life.
Läroplan så står det ju ganska tydligt att alla barn ska få utvecklas efter sina egna möjligheter. Så där tycker jag man tydligt kan se att vi tar emot alla barn och vi måste se till att stödja och utveckla alla barns förmågor utefter var de är och befinner sig.
O MEC apoia entusiasticamente porque o MEC acredita que a escola deve ser o espaço de todas as crianças brasileiras, tratadas de uma maneira igual, reconhecendo a diferença. Então a gente vai aprender com isso e todos vão ganhar.
The challenges right now, I believe, is that we have come to a place in the North American system where we have an intellectual understanding of inclusive education, and we pay lip service to it, and we have beginning legislation that supports it. We actually have legislation, period, that supports it. But to carry it out in practice to the very to the limit where we are 100% providing service in terms of inclusive schools is the challenge.
It's already happening, it has been happening for the last 30 years in some places. It's about political will, it's about the leaders of our countries and ministries of education actually understanding what's involved here. It's not about signing up to pieces of paper, it's about a whole system change from the top to the bottom and the bottom to the top.
Inclusive education matters because it ensures that our classrooms are reflective of society. And also we know from the research that inclusive education practices, which is even more important, inclusive education practices or the practices a teacher brings into a classroom benefits all children and enhances student learning overall, and so it leads to excellent pedagogy. So I think we're getting there. It's going to still take a long time. We have structures and systems that have been built to segregate. We have to dismantle them and change to get to where we need to be.